Hey there, welcome into this Adobe After Effects tutorial brought to you as always by tutvid.com. If you're new around here, my name is Nathaniel Dodson, and today we're going to take a look at creating this sort of text collision effect. It's a lower third type effect I saw in the intro or near the intro of a Rhett and Link video. I'm assuming they do it in all of their videos, but I don't really keep up with all their videos. But it was really, really cool, and I thought it would make a really neat tutorial, so here we are. Now, before we jump into this video, I got to let you guys know today's video is brought to us by our wonderful, generous, and just overall great sponsor, Squarespace.com. If you ever think you're going to need a website or update your current website or just want a website that's fast, easy to set up, mobile-friendly, and really inexpensive, you got to check out Squarespace. We'll talk a little bit more about them later, but there's a link in the bio. You can check it out, free trial, all that good stuff, and a discount code, tutvid, T-U-T-V-I-D. All right, let's jump into this tutorial and get this thing started. Okay, here we are in Adobe After Effects. And the first thing we'll do, just to keep things simple, is create a new composition so you can follow right along. You can name the composition whatever you like. I'm going to go with more of a 4K size, 3840 by 2160. I'm also going to choose a frame rate of 60. You got it, 60 frames per second. And a duration here, we don't need 2 minutes, so let's just go with something more like 5 seconds to keep things a little more under control. Let's go ahead and hit OK, and we have our composition. The first thing I'm going to do here is drag a couple assets in. I just have some stock video, and I also have this Twitter graphic. Really, you don't have to use the Twitter graphic. My Twitter graphic, it's just the Twitter logo isolated as a PNG. There's no background around it, and you can see it's 75 pixels by 75 pixels. So if you want, that's the size you want an icon if you're following along exactly with this tutorial with all the sizing and everything that I'm doing. I'm also going to come down here and select this little icon and just turn on title/action safe. It's going to give me this little grid, a heads-up display. Just going to help me make sure I align things up more properly and in a way that looks nice and symmetrical. All right, let's go ahead and grab the text tool. I'm going to click right here in the middle of my document, and I'm just going to type out a fake Twitter handle. I'm going to go with my name, Nathaniel. And the font that I want to use is an interesting font here. It's Acumen Pro Condensed. This is a font that's available if you have Adobe CC with Typekit. It's a Typekit font. You can get it, or just use any old font that you like. I'm going with Acumen at bold, 65 pixel size. I'm throwing 25 in terms of tracking on there. And then what I'm going to do here is reset my baseline shift to 0 pixels. I am going to just look and see if anything needs to be adjusted. I think where the at is, that looks fine. You could use baseline shift here to boost that up if you think it needed to be lifted up a little bit. Maybe I'll go baseline shift of 3 just for the at symbol. And then I'm going to hit Command Return. That's Control Enter to commit those changes. Now, one thing I want to do is move that center anchor point to the middle of the text. I'm going to do that by holding down Command Option, that's Control Alt on the PC, and double click this pan behind anchor tool. So there we go, and you can see our anchor point has moved to the center. Great. I'm going to open up my paragraph panel here and just make sure my text is aligned left in this case. It's going to keep us lined up the way we want to be lined up. And then what I'll do is drag the Twitter graphic in and place it over here. I'm going to grab my zoom tool and just zoom in on this. What I want to do is move these together so they kind of look right next to each other. They don't need to be aligned by the book perfectly. They just need to look right next to each other. That's going to be good enough for me. All right, that looks good. I'll drag a selection over both of them. You can see we have both of our layers. And I'm going to drag these down to kind of right around this corner. So something right around there will be perfect for us. Now, I'm going to select my text layer, and I think I'll leave it at the name @Nathaniel. For the Twitter graphic, I'm just going to hit the Enter Return key, and I'm just going to rename this Twitter just to clean it up a little bit. Now, we want to make sure that we link the Twitter graphic with the text. So I'm going to take the pick whip and I'm going to drag it down and drop it on the name Nathaniel. And you can see it's parented and linked now, just right there, parent link. And you can see that that layer is now linked together. You'll see exactly what that does in a little bit. But before I get to that, I'm going to hold down Shift, select both layers, and hit Command or Control D to duplicate them. And I'm going to grab Nathaniel 2 here, and I'm going to drag him up. And I'll just select both those layers and just shut them both off. We don't need them right now. We're going to use them later on in this tutorial. I just want to save them right there for now. So let's go ahead and animate this text and this icon into place. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to work on the Nathaniel text layer because the animation we apply to this is going to be applied to the little Twitter bird icon because these layers are linked together. So let's drop open the transform, and I'm going to work with scale here. I'm going to hit the little add a keyframe stopwatch. I'm going to move out about 10 frames. So I'm going to zoom in on my timeline using the plus key here at 10 frames. I am going to drop another keyframe by hitting the new keyframe button. I really could have began this a little bit differently. Let's go back to the first keyframe, and we're just going to set the width here to 0, and that's going to also set the height to 0. And now over the course of these 10 frames, you can see we're zooming up from nothing to our text. I'm going to shift click both of the keyframes out here on my timeline, right click on them, choose Keyframe Assistant, and choose Easy Ease. Now I'm going to come over here to my graph editor right there, and I just want to give this a little bump at the end. So this is our animation sliding into place at 100%. I'm going to click on that, and I can use this little tangent handle and say, look, let's make this bump a little past 100% and come back to 100%. So you're going to see we're going to get a little bump there at the end. Now maybe that's not quite enough. I'll zoom out a little bit. Let's pull that up a little bit higher. Let's go to maybe 125% or so. See what that looks like. So we zoom way up, we pop past, and just snap right back into place. So you can see what that looks like. All right, let's just click the graph editor icon to get out of the graph editor. And I'm going to head over here to my effects and presets panel, where you can see I've already run a search for blur, but just to show you exactly what I'm doing, blur. And I want to come down here and use directional blur. I'm going to drag this and drop it on my Nathaniel text layer. And my effect controls panel is going to open. This here is under Window, Effect Controls right there. And I want to do a few things. I'm probably not going to change it at all in the effect controls panel. I'm going to do it here in the effects section of my layer. So here under effects, we can see there's the directional blur. I'm going to drop that down as well. I'm going to come over here to 0 frames when the text is tiny, and I'm going to drop a keyframe for blur length. We want the blur length to be 0, essentially no blur. We're going to move out to about 7 frames, and here we're going to increase the blur length up to maybe like 15. So you can see it blurs it up and down about 15. And then we'll move out here to the 10th frame where it really shouldn't be blurred at all anymore. And we're just going to reset the blur length here to 0. And After Effects automatically keyframes all of that for us. We can shift select all those keyframes, right click, Keyframe Assistant, throw a quick Easy Ease on that, and we're good to go. So at this point, we have the introduction of our tag coming right in. It just pops right into place, looking good. So let's move about 2 seconds down our timeline to maybe 2 seconds, 10 frames, right down here. And I want to add a few more keyframes. Let's drop a keyframe here for the direction of the blur. Let's drop another keyframe for blur length. By the way, I'm not going to select the stopwatch in this case because we already have activated animation on this little parameter. If I hit the stopwatch, it's going to get rid of the keyframes we made. So we want to use the new keyframe button here. You can see we dropped the keyframe there. Great. And we're also going to move down. I want to drop a keyframe here for the position parameter here for our text layer. So we're going to drop a keyframe there as well. I'm going to move back 1 frame by holding on Command and hitting the left arrow key. That's Control and the left arrow key on the PC. And I'm going to add a second direction blur keyframe just to lock that in, because we're going to move back to that second direction blur keyframe, right? Really the first one we made, by hitting the little next keyframe arrow, right? We're right on that keyframe. And I'm going to change the direction of the blur to 90 degrees. So now we're going to have a blur that is going back and forth, side to side, if you will. Let's go ahead and move 3 keyframes down the timeline. So just Command or Control and the right arrow key 1, 2, 3 times. And here I'm going to change the blur length to 30. So you can see we're now getting this strong side-to-side blur, and it's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and move about 10 frames further down. So this is going to be at 2 seconds, 23 frames, about 10 frames beyond where our blur happens. And I want to move my text to the center of the composition. So we want to line this up with about the center line here. So I can actually grab the X-axis here for position, and when I hover over, you see I get that little double arrow with the finger. I can just tell this, hey, look, slide toward the middle of the document, maybe somewhere right around, maybe something like that is about the middle. We get our keyframe down there. I will select both of these keyframes. I'm going to right-click, Keyframe Assistant, and Easy Ease that as well. Now, here's where things are going to get a little interesting. So we've got this cool little animation that just slides, you know, looking very blurred toward the middle. But what I want to do is I want to, right when this animation begins, I actually want the text to head outward first and then shoot back inward toward the middle of the document. Now, you could do this with multiple keyframes, but we can also do it by just selecting both those keyframes that we just created and head into our graph editor here. And what I'm going to do is tell After Effects, hey, look, down here at the beginning of the animation, right back here at the 2 second and 10 frame mark, I want you to actually, instead of immediately heading up toward 2000 pixels, so you can see we're heading from about 500 pixels to 2000 pixels. Instead of doing that, I want you to head back here towards 0 first. This is 0 on the x-axis way over here. This is 2000 out here. So we want you to head back first, but you can see there's no real tangent handle for us to grab. So what we want to do is select the position element here in the layers panel, right click, and just choose separate dimensions. When we do that, we'll be able to select this, and now you can see we can really play with this and have some fun with it. So I'm going to pull this back and say, look, you come back this way, maybe bounce out something like that, and then shoot very quickly inward to 2000 pixels. So you can see here, we bump back and then shoot way across. So you can make this as long and flat as you like. The longer and flatter it is, sort of the more it's going to head to the left and hang out for a second and then race inward. So let's just play through this and see what it looks like. So you can see just a nice little bump. It's a nice little, almost accent thing. Maybe I want it to bump a little bit further, something kind of like that before it shoots inward. So bumps and just takes off just like that. Very cool. I think that'll work for us. I'm going to get out of Graph Editor. All right, let's take a quick break here. I want to show some love to Squarespace.com, our sponsor. They help support the channel. They're sponsoring this video. We love them and appreciate them very much. Squarespace has a system that allows you to easily build a beautiful and easy-to-use website. You're going to have your new website up and running super quickly. If you want a portfolio, a blog, or a full e-commerce store, you can do it quickly. You can do it easily with Squarespace. I built my own personal photography site on Squarespace. I've had it for years. I love it. It's fast. It's mobile-friendly. It's so easy to update. Check out squarespace.com/tutvid, T-U-T-V-I-D, or click the link in the bio of this video for your free trial. And if you decide to launch your website, use the code TUTVID, again T-U-T-V-I-D, to save 10% on your first website. Check them out. Show them a little love for supporting this channel. Squarespace, we love you. We appreciate you. We really are appreciative of your support. Let's get back into the tutorial. You can see that we've got the X position and Y position, and they're both keyframed. Don't worry about it. It's just that splitting up thing that we did before. What I now want to do is select the direction blur over here in the Layers panel and copy it. So Command or Control and the letter C to copy. And then I'm going to just select the Twitter layer and hit Command or Control V to paste that blur onto that layer, and it's going to paste it with its keyframes. But you can see what happens here. It's going to paste it with the keyframes wherever the playhead is. So I'm actually going to undo that, Command or Control Z. Let's move all the way back to the very beginning and hit Command or Control V to paste it in place there. And now the Twitter logo is also going to be blurred as it zooms in, and then the Twitter logo will also blur after 2 seconds here, and our text shoots across to the middle of the document. Now, we're not seeing the whole document. Let's fit this onto our screen. We would have, let's say, one Twitter handle show up here, and we want another Twitter handle to show up here. They're going to race and crash together in the middle of the document. So let's select both of these layers. There's Twitter, and then hold down Shift and select Nathaniel. Command or Control D to duplicate. Let's drag this guy up. And what we're going to do here is take both of these layers. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to drag them over to the other corner of the document. Now, we got some stuff going on here because it's going to animate all over the place. We're going to clean this up really quickly. What I'm going to do is select Twitter here, hit Enter, Return. I'm just going to call this Twitter Right. And then maybe this one I'm going to hit Enter. I'm going to call this Twitter Left so we know what's going on. First thing I'm going to do is zoom in, and I'm going to change the text in the handle. So I'm going to double click on that and say, you know what, we don't want Nathaniel. I'm going to go with my last name. I'm going to say D-O-D-S-O-N, Dodson, and I'm going to Shift select both of these layers. Once more, grab my Move tool and just use my arrow keys and just nudge them over until it's kind of in the right place. So there we go. Something like that looks right. Let's set this back to just fill up or fit within our space. And here, I'm going to just zoom out. We can see what's going on. Both texts are going to zoom and pop into place. Great. And as we move through, the Dodson text goes crazy. And then what's going on there? Well, let's just open up the Dodson text here. And we know there must be a problem with the position animation because right here, we can even see that's the keyframe that's giving us problems here. That keyframe is shooting across and then racing back to the middle. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to bump down Transform and say, hey, look, you troublesome keyframes right there. You're actually in the right position, right? The text should be sitting there. The text should not be sitting here. So what we'll do is we'll select these two keyframes and delete them. And then we're going to select these two keyframes here by just dragging a selection over them and just move them right back to place right there. So now this should also snap to the middle just as the other text does. Now, notice how much faster it gets to the middle of the document, right? The reason that's happening is because we haven't animated the bump outward here for this text yet. So let's select these layers. Let's go to graph, or not layers, I'm sorry, select those keyframes, go to the graph editor. Here it is. I'm going to zoom in up by hitting my plus key. And now this, in this case, this is where it's beginning here at above 3,000 pixels, and it's racing back to about 2,000 pixels. So we're further down the graph line on our x-axis. So we want it to go further down the line. So I'm going to say, look, you start above 3,000. I want you to jump up and head closer to 4,000, something like that. And you can see, boom, it's going to shoot outward. Now that's going a bit too far, so let's just relax that a little bit. I don't want it to go too much further than the bump out goes on the other side, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. Something right around there. So we bump out, and then we race toward the middle. Now this has to take a little bit longer because we're getting to the middle a little bit faster. We bump out, and then we take off toward the middle, and then it crashes together in the middle. It still needs to be adjusted, so I'm going to stretch it out a little bit more. What I'm doing here is I'm saying, look, slowly drift off to the right for a longer period of time, and then very quickly shoot toward the middle. Basically just trying to sync it up with the text that's coming from the left a little bit better. So something like that I think will work. It's still not perfect, but it's much closer. They're both meeting up nicely. All right, I'm going to exit the graph editor. And now right here at this point where this stuff all comes crashing together, we can trim all of these 4 layers, the bottom 4 layers, Twitter right down to the @Nathaniel. So I'm going to select all of these layers. I'm going to zoom out a bit. That's zooming out on my timeline, and I'm going to grab the end of these, and I'm just going to drag them back just to right there. So we see them for a second, they come together, and boom, then they're going to disappear. Because what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our originals again up here that we copied, and I'm going to call this Twitter Center, and I'm going to change the text here, not Nathaniel, but I'm going to go tutvid, because when you put my first and last name together, then you have the actual handle for tutvid, and that's tutvid. I'm going to select both of these bits of text and graphic and everything. I'm going to drag these to the center, so they're kind of right around the area where these 2 pieces of text come crashing together, just like that. I'm going to select both of the layers here in the timeline by shift-clicking them, and I'm going to trim these up to right there, and we can worry about trimming them back later, but I think we'll be fine. So the idea is going to be as soon as these crash together, they both disappear, and the tutvid will appear. So we can just play through this and see what it looks like. All right, so not horrible. It's kind of looking like a graphic from the 1990s, so we want to gussy it up a little bit. So what I think I'm going to do here is open up the tutvid text layer here. We're going to go to transform. I'm going to go to scale, and I'm going to drop a keyframe for scale. But before I do that, let's just unlink the constrained proportions, and we're going to set the width to like 70%. So we're going to squish this inward, and then we're going to drop our keyframe. And then what I'm going to do is move about 12 frames down the timeline. So hold down Command and Shift. That's Control and Shift on the PC. Tap the right arrow key. There's 10 frames. Let go of Shift, keep holding the Command or Control key, and go 1 frame, 2 frames. There we go. And then right here, I'm just going to reset my width to 100. Select both of these keyframes, right-click Keyframe Assist. By the way, there is this nice little F9 hotkey, which will do your easy ease for you. I'm just walking you through it each time because maybe I like to take the road less traveled sometimes. Now, with these keyframes selected, I am also going to go to the graph editor, and I'm going to bump this animation out a little bit. So I'm going to make it a little wider than 100% width. There's our 100% width. We're going to bump this out a little bit wider, something maybe kind of like that. Let's see what that looks like. So it's going to start really squished, and then it's going to pop out. All right, maybe we got to make it a little more extreme. Maybe we'll go to like 110% or so, maybe a little beyond. Let's see. Pop out and slide back. Let's see what that looks like. Boom. So you can see it's just giving us a little bit of like rubberized action when those 2 bits of text come crashing together. I think I kind of like it. Let's get out of the graph editor. And the last couple things I want to do to really help complete this effect are add a blur to this text and this Twitter icon, and then just add a little bed of stock video beneath this so we can see what this would look like in sort of a real life project. So let's go ahead and drag another directional blur out of effects, directional blur, drop it here on the text. And basically I just want this text and the Twitter icon to be very blurred. So I'm going to open up effects here, open up directional blur. I'm going to say, look, we're going to go with, well, we can just set the blur direction to 90 degrees. We don't need to worry about keyframing it. And here for blur length, I'm going to start this as pretty blurred. Let's go like 45 pixels. And then I'm going to drop a keyframe. And then right here, about 10 frames out, we're going to have it just fading back to being totally sharp. All right, I'll select both keyframes. Again, right-click Keyframe Assist. Easy ease that. And you're going to see here what we've got is this blur to not blurred type effect very quickly and easily, just like that. And of course, as we look at that, we want to select the directional blur. We want to go Command or Control C to copy it, and then just select that Twitter center layer. We'll move back here to the beginning where the animation should begin. Command or Control V to paste it in place. And now as we go through this, we'll see that the Twitter bird is heavily blurred until it's not. All right, let's quickly go back to our project bin. Let's drag some video in underneath this. Now, this is not 4K video, so what I'm going to do is right-click on it, go to transform, and just say, hey, look, fit this to the comp. It's going to stretch that video up for us, and I'm going to bring my playhead back to frame number 1, and I'll just quickly render this, and we'll check it out. And there you have it, a nice, simple text crashing effect here in Adobe After Effects. All right, well, there you have it. You can see we created it. It wasn't too bad, right? A lot of little moving parts, but just some keyframes and some animating and easing. That graph editor really comes in handy there for several of those effects that we created. If you enjoyed this tutorial, well, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any other video editing or After Effects related tutorials in the future. For messing around with just a lot of keyframes and some directional blurs and easing and graph editing and everything else we covered in this tutorial, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.